Hey, folks and idiots, is anybody gonna fucking mention how ridiculously bad movie companies are at choosing what band or artist to make a biopic of? Like, just think of it. They have a biopic about Queen, about Motley Crue, about what other bands? They have a biopic about Lady Gaga, and I think they also are about to make a biopic out of Britney Spears. But where's the biopic of Aerosmith? Where's the biopic of the Rolling Stones? Where's the biopic? There's so many bands. Like, where's the biopic of Fleetwood Mac? Where's the biopic of Slade? Where's the biopic of Oasis? Where's the biopic of Aha? Those, like, I'm 100% sure more people know about Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones more than they do Motley Crue. Do you know what I mean? Oasis even have had a bigger career and was more culturally relevant and just a bigger band in the world at the time Oasis were big than when Motley Crue were big. Oasis might have sold less albums than Motley Crue, but Oasis were more culturally relevant than Motley Crue ever were, because Oasis they were the leaders. Like, Oasis were the leaders of the lad rock and Britpop movement. And movie companies are thinking first about Motley Crue of all bands. Do you know what I mean? What has Motley Crue done other than making songs about sex? Do you know what I mean? They have influenced some people, but saying that Motley Crue was more culturally relevant and were bigger than Oasis is ridiculous. They have sold in terms of equivalent album sales. They have sold around the same amount of albums, both Motley Crue and Oasis. So I don't understand where come this idea that Motley Crue suddenly deserves more and more of a biopic than Oasis or Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones. Not only those three bands have been bigger and more culturally relevant than Motley Crue, but those bands have even been more influential than Motley Crue. And the same goes for Fleetwood Mac. Why the hell? Like, they have the best perfect biopic material you could ever imagine. And people have made biopics about Lady Gaga and Amy Winehouse, who has never been the top musician. Like, Lady Gaga was probably, like, Lady Gaga has never been at the levels of, let's say, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is the greatest artist of all time in the world. And why the hell doesn't Taylor Swift have a biopic? It's ridiculous. Why does Lady Gaga has a biopic when not Taylor Swift? Taylor Swift is light years more culturally relevant, more popular, more revolutionary than Lady Gaga ever was. And somehow, and Taylor Swift is writing her own songs, unlike Lady Gaga, who has writers that write most of her songs completely for her. So I don't understand why does. But and Amy Winehouse, yeah, I get that Amy Winehouse died young and she was a great artist and probably a lot culturally relevant. But like, how is her more culturally relevant and bigger and as influential as Taylor Swift? And the same goes for Lady Gaga. She is not as influential as Taylor Swift. It's simple as that. So it's so ridiculous what the movie companies is thinking of when it comes to biopics. They just pick and choose whatever floats in the air, and they don't care who deserves it first and who deserves our biopic in the first place. And Slade, even though they were probably not the most popular band in terms of sales, but in terms of single sales, they were enormous. And especially, like, it can't be overstated how big Slade were in, it can't be overstated how big Slade were in the UK and Ireland. Like, especially in the UK, it can't be overstated. Because it was a time when Slade released Merry Christmas Everybody, and that single sold over 1 million copies, man, like millions and millions. And that single alone, like, people in the UK, like the record, like the record factories were literally drained after the demand for that single. Like, people asked for that single way too much for the companies to hold up the demand for the demand. And like, the whole story of Slade, that they kind of went to like rock bottom in the late 70s and just like relaunched their entire career in 1980 with the infamous Reading festival performance. Like, how the hell doesn't that story have a biopic? And why the hell doesn't Oasis have a biopic? Why the hell doesn't Oasis have a biopic? Who literally made their first album, and that first album, that debut album by Oasis, went to #1 and went to be the best-selling album in UK history. Went on to be the best-selling UK debut album in UK history. And that record wasn't beaten until Arctic Monkeys' debut album several years later, actually a decade later, in 2006. Like, it's ridiculous how the way their fame just from they began as a band, like from they started releasing music to they went to Nebworth, like that happened in no time. They went from Northern English working class nobodies to absolute stardom, rock and roll stardom in just a few years. Like, they started in 1991 and they became the biggest band in the world in 1996. Do you know what I mean? Like the steep evolution from that, like that whole journey should be documented in terms of not just in terms of the Supersonic documentary, but like it should be a biopic about it. At least a biopic about it. If not, if you don't have a biopic about like it should be made a biopic out of it without a doubt, no question. And Aerosmith, they not only were way more influential and groundbreaking than Motley Crue, but they were not only more revolutionary and groundbreaking and bigger and more popular than Motley Crue, but they were also a lot more influential than Motley Crue, because they actually was the main band that Aerosmith was the band that made the members of Motley Crue to pick up the guitar and start a band in the first place. So without Aerosmith, it wouldn't be Motley Crue. Do you know what I mean? So why the hell does Motley Crue have a biopic before Aerosmith, when Aerosmith is responsible for Motley Crue to even exist? Like, Aerosmith is responsible for Motley Crue's existence. So why the hell does Motley Crue is the first to have a biopic? And there's so many other bands, do you know what I mean? It's like, even the Black Crowes, do you know what I mean? Their stories is completely wild. They may not be the biggest band in terms of popularity, but in my opinion, they are the greatest Anglo-speaking band in the world. I think the Black Crowes are absolutely awesome, and I think they're even a better band than Oasis and the Rolling Stones. And they fucking deserve, because that civil rivalry between the Robinson brothers, that should be documented. It just should be, because the whole story for them and that they were fired from a CC Top, they were fired from opening for CC Top and Aerosmith and so many other bands. And that they, like, the story, like, especially Aerosmith's story from 1990 to 1999, that were like the prime, the Black Crowes quality, do you know what I mean, in terms of their quality of their music. And the Rolling Stones, and I get like that the Rolling Stones is a brand, and there is a way more like a brand focused band than any other of these bands, but still, so are kind of the Beatles, and they are about to get a biopic. So why don't the Rolling Stones have a biopic? Do you know, it's ridiculous. If it is a band that deserves a biopic, then it's definitely the Rolling Stones. Do you know what I mean? Why don't, like it would be perfect that they would have their entire career, like, within a biopic, like, both from the start to end. Like, when Mick and Keith met on the train station with Mick with this record in his hands, and all those times. And it would be also just great if they only documented a tiny portion of their career. Do you know what I mean? The Exile on Main Street era, or Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Street era together, or having or just only focusing on their era as a band in the 60s, from they started in when Mick and Keith met at the train station with Mick in the record in his hands and Keith asking kind of see the records and or where you got the records, and from the point to they crashed, completely destroyed the whole hippie movement by completely destroy the hippie movement. Completely destroyed the hippie movement with crashing the whole thing with the ultimate incident and all those, anything like, or the entire period up till the ultimate disaster, like the entire ultimate disaster within that whole story would be amazing. Like the Rolling Stones is such a complex band. You can't. It's like very difficult to like make it everything, the entire the Rolling Stones history justice. But it's so many things like, and it's like ZZ Top would be a great thing to have a biopic of, like Billy Gibbons moving from the moving Sidewalks to ZZ Top, or and like he comes from a family that the father was like a businessman or whatever, and then they changed members, and then they became the version of ZZ Top we all love, that we all know and love today. Or even Deep Purple, and there's so many bands that couldn't deserve more to get a biopic, but they, like, because I love biopics, like about bands specifically, but also musicians. But I'm not that big of a biopic when it comes to other types of artists and other types of people. I'm because I'm always preferring band biopics. But I love all types of biopics. I love the Elvis biopic. I like to watch a biopic no matter who the biopic is about, as long as they are a musician. Do you know what I mean? Because I never listened to Motley Crue, but I love the biopic they made for them. But like, I don't think Motley Crue was even worthy of a biopic, but they made it so good without them deserving it that it actually became enjoying to see that biopic. It was an enjoyable experience to watch that. And there's so many other things. Like, there's so many other things that, so many other bands, like, it's so many artists that, like, people just move to the side and don't care about when it comes to biopics. They just don't care about it. And I don't like Queen either, but I love the but I used to love the biopic. I don't like the biopic anymore. I kind of fallen out of love with it. But I just wish that Hollywood, or like movie companies in general, could be a bit more genuine when it comes to picking their choices of making a biopic, and not just picking out of thin air like a random artist like Motley Crue, and actually make a biopic of a band that actually deserves, before any other artists get a biopic. There's so many others. Do you know what I mean? Chuck Berry, forget about the bands, but Chuck Berry, he was not just the father of rock and roll. He was a king of rock and roll. Like, fuck Elvis. I don't like Elvis either. I like the biopic of Elvis, because I like biopics of musicians, whatever type of musician it is, as long as it is a good biopic of a musician. But Chuck Berry was the real king of rock and roll and the father of rock and roll. He is the 50s musician that deserves the most to get a biopic. And it's such a shame that Elvis got before Chuck Berry. Like got that biopic before Chuck Berry, and so many others like Muddy Waters, Little Richard. Do you know what I mean? Many great ones. And like I understand why Elton John got it, but please make a new David Bowie biopic another time, because David Bowie deserves a proper biopic. People should use their money to make a proper David Bowie biopic, not the one that is now, whatever it's called, Ziggy Stardust or whatever. Like David Bowie should be completely David Bowie should be completely people should really kind of put their money on a new David Bowie biopic, because he deserves justice, David Bowie. So he deserves, since he is one of the greatest solo artists that ever existed on earth, ever walked this earth. So if he's someone that deserves a biopic, then it's definitely David Bowie. Bye.